Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Legends of Sport podcast. I'm your host, Andy Bernstein. On this episode, we're headed back to Las Vegas, where we interviewed some really great folks during USA Basketball's 50th anniversary celebration last summer. Our guest today is someone I have known for my entire working experience with USA Basketball, going back to the 1992 Dream Team. His name is Craig Miller. For 33 years, Craig was the Chief Media and Communications Officer for USA Basketball until his retirement. My NBA colleagues and I spent many summers working closely with Craig and his USA Basketball colleagues, including Jim Tooley, Sean Ford, and Caroline Williams, starting with that amazing summer in 1992. Craig was truly one of the nicest people I've had the pleasure of working with throughout my career. He had a tough job, with a pretty high level of stress, as you can imagine, but you would have never known it. A pro's pro, and I'm glad to call him my friend. So happy he was able to sit down and chat with me on this episode. I hope you will also enjoy this conversation with Craig Miller, and as always, I'll see you on the backside. Well, I can't tell you how happy I am to have my buddy Craig Miller sitting here next to me doing this podcast for Legends of Sport. First of all, did you ever think that you'd see me without a camera?
Never. In front of a microphone? No way.
Right.
No way.
Yeah.
It's by the same token, I never figured I'd be sitting in a chair next to you.
Yeah, so there you go.
There's two of us I probably never imagined that we'd be in these roles.
Yeah, you and I go way back, man. We go back to the Dream Team training camp. First day in San Diego. I remember meeting you for the first time. And that core group that stayed together for years and years and years. How long did you work for USA Basketball?
32 years.
32 years.
Yeah,
God bless you.
I retired in February of 2022.
Right.
So.
And your final title was what?
Communications director.
Director. So basically PR guy.
Yeah.
So as the PR man, going back to the Dream Team, let's go back in time. Let me know how you dealt with those egos, with those gigantic personalities on the Dream Team. And you're working in conjunction with the NBA, of course. First time there were NBA players, pro players on USA Basketball. So that was a whole new enchilada to deal with, right?
Right.
So how did that I don't know how that marriage worked from the beginning.
Well, I was hired in 1990 and was the first PR person I had.
Mm-hmm.
And it really came of being because of the 88 Olympics. John Thompson was the coach, and, John had his way of not being media friendly. And it wasn't a surprise to anybody. But being the Olympic team, they got a lot of negative feedback from the media. So Dave Gavitt, C.M. Newton, Russ Granick were kind of the leaders. Bill Wall were the leaders of USA Basketball at the time, and they decided they were going to hire their own PR person because typically what they did was when the coach was hired for an Olympic team or a world championship, they would take the PR person from that school.
Mm-hmm.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they hired me, and one of the questions I asked them was how much control I have over running a PR program, because I was at Villanova, and we'd come off the 85 national championship. We had a good program. I was very close with Coach Mass. And Dave and Russ and CM said it's going to be totally in your charge as long as it makes sense. We'll back you.
Yeah.
So, I took the job knowing that NBA players hopefully were coming on board. We weren't sure.
Oh, you didn't know that in 90? You didn't know that?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right.
We knew that the rule had changed, but we didn't know, will players actually come and play?
Yeah.
We thought they would, but we didn't know for sure. And then, of course, we start to get inklings that this player is going to play and this player is going to play. And then, when we got Jordan, we knew that we were going to have quite a team. And so the PR at that time, I was, as funny as it is now, was a little anti-NBA. Yeah. Because I wanted my own thing, It's like, I'm going to do my thing. But
interesting.
I did get with Russ, and he conveyed some concerns that David Stern had and expectations that they had, which are fair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Brian McIntyre, who was the legendary PR guy for the NBA, was
great friend.
had become a friend of mine.
Yes.
I knew him because he was kind of helping me along the road with working with NBA guys, and they said we want him to come.
Yeah.
And it made sense.
Yeah,
so we did it. And then Terry Lyons came as well.
Of course.
Matt Dobick, we added him because of his relationship with Coach Daly. He was the Pistons PR guy.
Forgot about that. Yeah.
So it was the four of us taking on this team, and we did some things that people said couldn't get done. I'm really proud of. One of us when we first opened training camp in San Diego. We had a 30-minute media session where each player had his own station, like you do at All-Star now.
Right.
And we put them up on a riser, had a table, had a sound system, had a backdrop of black curtains, and everybody said, there's no way you'll get Jordan to do it. And I think because he was so conscious of wanting to be part of the team, and the other members, Larry Bird and Magic, were so conscious of wanting to be part of the team, everybody showed up.
Yeah.
Everybody did it. They didn't like it necessarily, but they did 30 minutes of interviews every day after practice.
I remember that, yes, and that was very surprising that they actually did that.
And the one thing I forgot to do, though, is a kind of a funny story was, so we're in, I think it was the Portland Convention Center, and they had this big space where we had like I said, all these stations set up for each player, and we had it signage, Michael Jordan will be here, and so-and-so will be here, and it curtained just like you have kind of as a backdrop here. I was standing by Michael Jordan's spot, and it was jammed. There's people out there, but it was all good because he's above him. He's got space. He's comfortable. All of a sudden, his head sticks out through the curtain. Some guy trying to get a photo on Michael's shoulder.
Wasn't me, was it?
No. You got all the photos you wanted. Yeah. So we had to make it a little adjustment and get some security people to make sure nobody got back behind the table and the podium.
Oh, my God, crazy.
But the players were great. And my first memory of you was doing the team photo.
Oh, my God.
I think it was record time.
I was just going to ask you about that. Let's if I had hair back then, which I did, I lost half of it on that experience. So it was somebody's brilliant idea to do, it wasn't yours, to do the team photo of the Dream Team in the basement, literally, of the Portland Memorial Coliseum.
I think it was a utility closet that stored like chairs and benches.
It was literally ridiculous. It had maybe an 8-foot ceiling.
Yeah, I do remember
so
that.
we have to get like David Robinson and Patrick Ewing and these huge guys, and it had to be tiered. And then there was the whole sort of choreography of where everybody's going to stand in relation to everybody else, and blah 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 blah. And you probably remember this. We get the guys in there, and they're in uniform, and they're standing there, and I take one shot, and half the lights go off.
Oh, I do remember.
Because the breaker blew.
Oh,
and there's nobody to reset the breaker. Yeah. I literally just lost it.
Sometimes you can't make the stuff up that happens.
I don't know how we made that happen.
I do remember we did the team photo, right?
Yeah.
And as traditionally you did.
Yeah.
You had everything organized to a T. And then we would add in maybe peripheral people.
Yes.
And we would have one or two groups of maybe maybe it was Dave Gavitt and
the trainers,
the trainers or the doctors, and then one would be more of the more affiliated staff, if you will.
Yeah.
And I remember we got through to the 2 or 3 shots of the affiliated staff, so we've probably taken just barely 3 group shots. And Michael Jordan said, "Okay, that's good." Yeah. And he got up and walked. Yeah. Got up and walked.
Yeah.
But the photo is legendary. Obviously,
is. Yeah.
You have the flag in the backdrop, which is just an amazing shot for the Dream Team.
Right, but you know the story of the flag, obviously. Remember?
I don't.
So that was the photo that went out, the official photo of the Dream Team in uniform as publicity for the Olympics.
Correct.
Right? And it was a high-pressure thing. We get an American flag. We decide to hang an American flag behind the guys. And you just not remember this, but got all of this mail. It wasn't email. It was like people wrote in.
There was an email in.
You guys put the flag
backwards.
Put the flag backwards. The stars are supposed to be on the left side and they're on the right side. I mean, who knew?
Yeah.
And in those days,
flag etiquette.
There was no. We We didn't know.
Right.
And,
I never knew that. I didn't know that.
There was no Photoshop. You could just turn it around or something.
Right,
Oh my
right.
God! So to this day, it's hung the wrong way.
I always thought it was like kind of like on the jets where they got the flag. But I do know there is flag etiquette.
Yeah.
And I learned that too,
Yeah,
by the way, as you did along the way.
It's just one of those anecdotes of the dream
Yeah,
team, of which we have a million of them. So we get to, we go through all of training camp, and we tournament in the Americas. We end up in Monaco for more training camp, quote unquote, which
golf
was,
training camp.
Yes, which was amazing, and it was like a little family, because the guys were so insulated that they couldn't. Once we got to Barcelona, obviously they couldn't be out in the public. The only person who could go out in the public was John Stockton.
Yep, I remember that.
And he was perfectly fine. But everyone was basically sequestered in the hotel. Mm-hmm. Do you have any stories of like the hotel situation?
I have a great story. Two great stories to your point.
Yeah. One
was we coming back from practice and we're on the bus, and this is so different than it is now, where literally it was the players, the coaches. Ed Lessert was our trainer. I don't think there was two trainers. I think we had one trainer.
No, it's just Ed.
I think we had Dr. Fisher, who was our doctor, and nobody else was on the bus. Right. I mean, we had one security officer. That was it. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, there's a PR staff of 4 or 5, and there's probably 3 buses that go,
Absolutely.
But back then it was one bus, and you got on the bus, and Tom McGrath was the men's executive director for USA Basketball, and he was kind of the general manager, if you will, of the team.
Yeah.
And he didn't want anybody with the NBA entertainment, anybody with NBA photos, anybody outside of our little group on the bus. And I do remember we talked about trying to get you on the bus, and we got some great – I'm so glad we did because
me too.
We got some great photos. But the 2 stories I remember is one coming back from practice once. Traffic was a nightmare.
Yeah.
And we're stuck in traffic. And John says, hey, stop the bus. And, we were already kind of stopped. And he gets up, starts walking. I remember it's like, hey, Joe, where you going? He goes, the advantage of being me, I can get off this bus and walk home. And he got off the bus and started walking down the roundabout back to the hotel.
No way.
And he's walking you see now the video that he took himself. He goes up to people. I don't know if you've ever seen this. Where he goes up to a lady wearing a Dream Team shirt, and he says, hey, have you seen anybody on the Dream Team? And he's with his kids. And they're like, no, I haven't. And he goes, really? How about that John Stockton guy? They go, oh, I'm looking for magic, or I'm looking for, it's a hilarious video, and it's real.
Funny. Yeah.
So that was one, and the team was dying because, sure enough, he beat us back to the hotel.
That's hilarious.
And that was one time I definitely remember. The other time that I remember was I did a site survey, and we went to Monte Carlo, and we met with the people at the Lowe's Hotel, which is a pretty famous, very nice hotel in Monte Carlo. And the general manager was showing us around, and this will be your ballroom space, and these are your rooms, and this is your dining area. Yeah. And we started talking security, and he looked at us, and he was like, security. And we're like, yeah, we're expecting a lot of fans. Because this is even before we had a practice or anything. And we said, we think there's going to be a pretty good group of people. He says, oh, this is Monte Carlo. He says, there's kings and queens here all the time. They don't care. So he said, all right. Yeah. So sure enough, we show Monte Carlo at about 10 o'clock. If you remember, it was really late at night. And do you remember the parking lot?
Yes.
It was a madhouse.
It was crazy.
And we see the GM.
It's like the Beatles had showed up.
Exactly. Yeah. And we walk into the lobby, and I saw the GM, and I think I was with Josh Rosenfeld. And Josh and I said to him, this is Monte Carlo. We have kings and queens here all the time. Yeah. So it was that.
We don't have the Dream Team.
No, that was the beginning of realizing. What a crazy trip it was going to be. And the other thing that was a pretty funny story was, so we get to the hotel in Barcelona, and I'm not kidding you, people don't believe me, but there's thousands of people outside the hotel just waiting to see the guys walk 20 yards to the bus.
24 hours a day.
Yes.
People are camped out.
Yes.
Like, it's crazy.
So we went to do a site survey at practice.
Yeah.
It's like one of the first days, obviously. And we wanted to make sure we knew what the practice site was like and how we were going to get media in, where we were doing interviews. And and I think it was Brian McIntyre again and Terry Lyons and myself, and we're on the bus. The only way we could get there is by bus. So the bus takes us to the practice facility, and we come back, and the bus pulls up in front of the hotel, and the crowd starts going crazy. And the door opens up, and we get off.
It's Brian McIntyre.
We get off, and all you hear is this, in complete silence. It went from like 1,000 decibels to nothing.
Oh my God!
So talk about being humbled, but
and they had police guarding the bus 24 hours a day.
Police on the roof.
Yeah, I remember when we were on the bus going to Barcelona, which was the actual venue, and we'd be on the opposite side of traffic with a police escort
and a helicopter above.
A helicopter. It was
the first time I'd ever seen that.
Yeah, that was wild.
But the team was pretty much locked down, as you said, except for. Guess who?
Yeah, John Stockton.
And guess who else?
Charles Barkley.
Charles Barkley.
And so that is a PR man's nightmare, because here you got Charles Barkley going out to the Ramblas at 1 o'clock in the morning, being one of the people.
Yes.
And I actually did a story for Sports Illustrated. I shot the photos of the Mad Bull of the Ramblas, right?
I remember reading that.
And I mean, it must have been some sleepless nights for you.
Well, the funny thing was that. So we have 12 superstars. We decided early on, I'm talking to Brian, I can't coordinate interviews for 12 superstars. There's so much media interest.
Yeah.
We decided the best way to do it was we'll draft guys.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just pick guys, and we'll do, each one of us has 4 guys.
Uh-huh.
So, we're trying to match up by what makes sense, because, again, Brian McIntyre had been the Chicago Bulls guy, so him working with Michael Jordan made sense. So he had Michael Jordan. I think Terry Lyons, who was from the Boston area, if I'm not mistaken, ended up with Larry.
Yeah.
I got Charles.
Yeah. Got the short straw on that one,
buddy. I'm doing Charles, and I love Charles.
Yeah.
He is one of the all-time greats.
Yep.
Truly is. I've done 9 Olympics. He's probably among my top 5.
Wow, 9 Olympics?
Yeah,
Greg?
top 5 guys to be with.
Yeah.
But the first time he goes out to Ramblas, I'm following him.
Yeah.
Because I'm nervous. Like you
Let's
said.
make sure he gets back.
I'm just nervous. I want to know what happens and what he says.
Yeah.
And he's just out there greeting people and high-fiving people. And he was
sitting down with people at outside bars and stuff.
He was the best ambassador for the United States
at
that time. And people loved him. They just gravitated toward him. And he was on good behavior. He really was.
He was.
And he was wonderful. And after the first night, I just said, I can't continue to follow him. And he had other people with him, of course. A couple of his friends are security people.
Yep.
But it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to stay in a hotel locked down where other guys, I remember, weren't willing to really venture out or weren't able to really venture out.
Some epic card games going on.
Sure.
And pool.
Ping pong.
And ping pong, yeah.
And the good fun thing was they had their families with them.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys I saw interact differently than I had ever seen them before, because they had maybe their son or daughter with them and their wives. And it was fun to see them in a family setting where they're, maybe fooling around with their kids. Right. Or remember they had that big playroom area?
Yes, and they some of them had babies.
Yeah.
Carmelo was feeding his baby, I remember, and Larry had.
And I think John Stockton had like 5 kids.
Yeah, I shot that picture in the pool in Monte Carlo.
Which is really rare, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it was great.
Yeah, I mean, because he didn't like notoriety at all. So,
but
it was really, and the best part about that whole thing, the whole '92 Dream Team, people ask me all the time is, I didn't know what I was in for. So you were just on the ride, and you were going by. I love to say I was really well prepared for everything. We were flying by the seat of our pants at times, just trying to figure out how are we going to do all this media, how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that. Yeah. And then one of the harder parts was, post games, always trying to make sure that we didn't always take Michael, or we didn't always take Charles, because Charles was playing, I think he was the leading scorer that time. Yeah. So we tried to divvy it up with everybody. And so it worked out. It really worked out great because of the players, truly. And because of the relationships that ended up, that Brian and Terry had built over the years with the players. So that really made it work. And so my decision, my brilliant decision, I'm taking credit now, of bringing them on board as well, was really great. And we ended up having multiple Olympics together, the PR team.
And everyone became good friends.
We did. We did. Nothing like a battle to make you hardened friends.
Well, there's 2 other things before I let you go that we got to talk about. One was the subplot going in with the dream team was Magic actually playing, which was a gigantic thing. You know, he announced his HIV diagnosis, was not in the league anymore. David Stern asked him to please play, and he kind of put it out to the players to allow Magic to play in the 92 All-Star game. And there he is on the dream team. And, you know, that was a whole other thing you had to deal with, right? Because there was a lot of misinformation going around all over the world.
Unknown information, really.
Unknown information. There might have been a couple of players on the team who might not have been thrilled that he was on the team, you know, with that diagnosis. But did that ever play into anything that you had to do during that summer?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, once the All-Star game helped tremendously. But if you remember, like, I think when he was named, I think there was players in Australia that were saying, from the Australian team, that were saying they didn't want to play against him because they were worried about
that. Yes.
And so, you know, you're dealing with the fallout. And again, it's probably good that there wasn't email back then. But I remember part of my job at USA Basketball was to answer public mail.
Yeah.
So, you know, people that wanted autographs, we had a dream team photo that you had taken that we'd put autographs around and printed off. So it wasn't genuine autographs, but it showed printed on. Right. And we'd send him an autograph picture rather than say that, we'll forward this to Magic and he'll send you an autograph. That wasn't going to ever happen, probably.
Yeah.
But I remember we got tremendous hate mail about having added Magic to it because nobody understood what it was.
No.
And it was such a negative character thing that they were like, how could he represent the United States of America?
Yeah.
And they were already a lot of the public was already against the NBA players playing in the Olympics because they thought it was an amateur event. You know, in '88, I had done the Seoul Olympics, and I was a track press officer for track and field for the USA team. And I had Carl Lewis and everybody else. Yeah. So one of the things I always tried to point out to people was we've had pros for probably two Olympics, 84 and 88. I mean, track and field were definitely pros. They were on the pro circuit.
Right.
There were other sports that had pro athletes, just not high profile.
Yeah.
And, we got criticized for not staying in the village in Barcelona. And yet I remember in 88 going to a hotel to pick up some of the track people for press conferences. I went to the Intercontinental and picked them up. They weren't in the village either. But nobody had ever collectively as a group. But back to your question, the AIDS was, people just didn't, there wasn't information available, A, and B, the stigma to it was so negative. But by playing it in the All-Star game and being accepted by NBA players, that really, you started to see it change a little bit. And Magic was such a lovable guy, right? I mean, people really were attracted. It's like a Charles Barkley thing. His personality just, people wanted to like him and wanted to root for him. And I think ultimately him playing put AIDS stigma up ahead, years ahead of what it would have been otherwise. I mean, because he took a lot of the brunt, of having to answer questions about it and his lifestyles or how he did it or whatever did it. And so, it was, you're right, that was a big controversy.
That was, and that was just another layer of what you had to deal with.
Yeah.
But Craig, the last thing I want to talk about is a fun memory. The team was invited by Prince Rainier of Monaco, right? Yeah. So the
for dinner,
a state dinner at the castle, right, in Monaco. Prince Albert, who went to school at Amherst when I was at UMass, by the way, big NBA fan. Yes. So I think his dad just wanted to do Albert a favor and have the team come up. There are a bunch of memories that I think both of us have. Maybe we can't talk about, but what do you remember about? Because I have my own memory of the protocol meeting.
Right. I'm going to see if I hit on it because that's one of mine too.
Yeah.
When they were telling us that when the prince stops eating, you stop eating.
Right.
And I think Barkley's line was, well, he better hope I've eaten my meal when he stops.
Yeah.
Because he had no intention of not eating.
Right. I remember the chief of protocol, this buttoned-up guy.
Correct.
And it was like a medieval situation. The guy looks. He was dumbfounded that somebody actually made a joke about this.
No
really.
No
but what a fun night that was.
That was a crazy night. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you guys let me bring my dad to that. It was like one of the great memories that
your
we
dad
ever had.
Was great to be around. He was
Zellig.
He was a lot of fun.
My dad Zellig because he was like in every picture.
He was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you guys were wonderful.
Yeah, the whole Monte Carlo experience was
Yeah, that was a trip.
To imagine, at least for me, to go see someplace like the Grand Casino that James Bond would walk in his tux and spend $1 million gambling against some criminal, and yet there we were doing the same thing. Not spending $1 million, but
but I went out to the golf course with Michael and Chuck Daly, and it was just like unbelievable. What a scene!
It was a fun trip.
We talk about a million other things, Craig, but it's so great to see you.
I enjoyed it very much.
We spent so much time together.
A lot of great
memories.
A lot of great memories, a lot of great photos.
One of the great early memories, going to White Castle in the middle of the night in Chicago when we were there.
After I think it was a Hollywood casino visit. Riverboat.
We made a couple of casino visits. Good to see you, buddy.
Good.
Thanks so much.
Great seeing you. Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thanks to my friend Craig Miller for stopping by for this fun conversation and a walk down memory lane of our shared history with USA Basketball. Thanks again, everyone, for tuning in to this episode of the Legends of Sport podcast. We love bringing these conversations to you, so please continue to tell all your friends to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Legends of Sport. Also to our Instagram at Legends of Sport, and my photography can be found on Instagram at ADB Photo Inc. Big thanks, as always, to our producer, Carlin Barker, our editors, Sean Gosser and Addison Xiao, and our intern, Will Allen. Big thanks to Renee Felton from USA Basketball for all her help while we were in Las Vegas. Big shout out to Fujifilm and Memento for being great supporters of the Legends of Sport podcast while we were in Las Vegas. Thanks again to all our loyal followers, and we'll see you next week for another fun episode on the Legends of Sport podcast.